It's good to be with you again, and so good to have a chance to tell you what's on my mind these days. This particular day, I was reading in the Bible this morning, Ezekiel chapter 37. If you're a fairly good student of the Bible, you might recognize that chapter number, though a lot of us know stories from the Bible and don't know exactly where they've come from. But here's a chapter that's often familiar to us because it's such an extraordinary story. It was a vision that came to Ezekiel when he was preaching and prophesying to the people of Israel in their captivity. They had every reason to have lost all hope, to have lost all heart, to have a feeling that there was no prospect anymore for God, for the people of God, for the purposes of God. And so God led the prophet Ezekiel in vision, apparently, out to a valley that was full of bones, dry bones. In fact, the chapter of Ezekiel says, "And behold, they were very dry," which lets you know how bad off the situation was. And then God addressed a question to that prophet Ezekiel. "Son of man," he said, "can these bones live?" It was a playful question, I suppose, and a terribly challenging one. Ezekiel had the good sense to come up with the perfect answer. I wish I could always be as wise as that. Ezekiel said, "O Lord God, you know." That is, I don't know, but you do know. And it was also a way of saying to God, from where I sit, who would dare to imagine that these bones could live? But, oh God, from where you sit, anything is possible. So you tell me whether these bones can live. Well, as I say, it's one of my favorite chapters of the Bible. It has a sentimental attachment to me, for one thing, because one of the first full-length sermons that I preached from this text. I was 16 or 17 at the time, and they gave me the chance to preach it at the youth gathering at our church. In those days, the youth group was ranged from 12 years of age to 35. That's a strange range now for a youth group, but times were different then. And so here we had junior high people, senior high people, college age, young marrieds, all the way up, as I say, to age 35, and there was a pretty good representation of all those ages present for most of those events, and especially at a preaching event like this. And I preached from that text. I don't really know much of what I said. I do remember that I had 4 points in the sermon, for whatever that was worth. And I do know that I was convinced in my soul, my immature, still developing, but quite certain soul, that God could indeed do anything. God could bring life out of death. God could revive any people, any nation, any church or Sunday school class. God could bring restoration. I'm glad that I had that vision when I was 16 or 17 years old, that God could handle anything. And in that regard, I haven't changed. I still have that deep conviction. I suspect that sometimes these days I might be more realistic about it, if I may use a sometimes overworked term, because I've seen that if you're going to see God do a great thing, it's going to take some great cooperation on our part to have it come to pass. But I do believe that God's willingness remains, as it always has been, and it's up to us then to respond. I have another feeling about it, however, now as I read through that chapter this morning and thought about the 16-year-old who preached from it so long ago. I said to myself, there's another way of applying this from my experience, because I wasn't dead all those years ago, but I was so young, so untested by life, so still trying to find my way, that there was about as much hope for me as there was for a valley of dry bones. And I look back on all of that now, and I thank God that God can take, whether it's a valley of dry bones, or a 16-year-old, or a 40-year-old, or a person who's untalented or limited in one way or another, God can take what God gets and use it if we have the willingness and the heart to go get with God in his asking. So for me, it has a different meaning today, that I remember now that here was somebody quite inept, quite unqualified, and God faithfully has used that person through the years. So I keep on believing in the 37th chapter of Ezekiel. And when God says of a certain scene, can these bones live? I want to say, you know, O Lord, and if you say they can, I'm with you. That's what I'm thinking about today, and may God bless you.